Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the January first one of the year meeting of the Planning Board. Nice to have you here. I'd like to start the agenda, please. I'll entertain a motion that the meeting be opened.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to open the first meeting of 2019 of the Southampton Village Planning Board.
I'll second it.
Seconded.
Aye.
In favor, Jane?
Aye.
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 Okay, and we have Jacqueline Allen, who manages all our affairs for the building department, down with us this evening to record the events. So hopefully our taking of minutes and her having them for the file will be quite routine. Thank you for coming. Okay, the first matter in front of us is, I'm going to put the word again in, Cowles Associates down at the bottom of Little Plains Road, 3 months extension.
Yes, for the applicant, John Bennett.
Thank you, John. So what's come up?
Well, the board, in their resolution, stated that the map had to be filed in March, but required the covenants to be recorded by December. So we just, Bo and I have been having some back and forth on the covenants, so not unusual. So we just respectfully request a 3-month extension. Nothing has changed whatsoever. Okay. That's that. And then as long as I'm here, I know it was with the holiday season, sort of slows things down, gets things, whatever. But we did, for the draft map to you, Kathy, on the December 14th, I think it's pretty rote, but if you could just take a look at it and make sure that you're okay with the map that we're going to file. Because it's going to be filed as a miscellaneous map, because there's no need for any health department. Right. If you, whatever, I just wanted to,
so
just a reminder. So this map
then is to have these two, quote, formerly acres had divided into one lot, right?
No.
It's not one lot?
It's, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted approval to unmerge the lots. The lots had been,
I meant
the reverse,
to merge it back to where it was, yeah, the two.
Unmerge.
Yeah, unmerge. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Just to put it back to where it had been. Yeah.
Thank you. I know it's the reverse. Thank you, Council. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so I guess we entertain a motion that on Cowles Associates at 477 Little Plains that we grant up to a 3-month extension. Is that moved?
I make a motion to, at the request of the applicant, extend the Cowles Associates application for 3 months.
Now extend it to a specific day, Roy, so that'll be the March.
To the March.
January?
April, the
April
regular meeting. The April 8.
Extend the Cowles Associates application to the April 8th meeting of the Planning Board.
I'll second it.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. Good to see you all. Thank you.
Okay, in front of us next, it's in the public hearing mode, is East End Holdings at 38 and 22 Jobs Lane, which I believe materials came up at the end of last year to request that by the applicant to withdraw the application at this time. Does that require us, they just do it, we don't have to vote for them to withdraw it. To me, they just take it out.
I don't know how the letter was phrased. Is there a letter in the file?
There is. Just to ask that it would be removed from the calendar.
The application was withdrawn, I believe, without prejudice, and they just withdrew it. So there's no.
So why don't you just acknowledge, just acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal, not the request, but their withdrawal of the application without prejudice.
Okay.
Motion to acknowledge.
I think a motion would be
yes.
Right for the record?
Yeah.
Okay. A motion to acknowledge the request.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to acknowledge the request of the applicant.
No, not the request, the withdrawal.
The withdrawal, I was going to say the request of the applicant to withdraw, but the applicant's
They've already withdrawn it, so it's they're not requesting, they're announcing withdrawal, as I understand the letter.
Yes.
Let's look at the letter. Accuse us for 1 minute, please.
The letter specifically says this is our request.
All right, okay, then all right, then you're granting the request.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Okay. The motion.
I make a motion to
Approve.
acknowledge the applicant's,
No, you approve, now to approve the request.
to approve the request of the applicant to withdraw their application without prejudice, and the file to be marked accordingly.
Okay, is that
Thank you.
Second.
second is passed?
Aye.
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 Motion is passed. Thank you. Okay, the next item is a public hearing on the lot up at, by the square, 116 North Sea Road. This is, as we all remember, a request which we started is for permission to make changes. The issues in front of us involved Bowden Square and outline the thing. It's been revised a couple of times, and we were told that a bank of no description, no transaction yet, it's to have a bank facility. It has to do with the parking, the cars, and access and so forth. Personally, I would like to observe that by my count, I believe the village at this point has 11 banks, which is quite a banking center for Suffolk County. And I am also advised by planning persons that the increase of banks in a municipality is an item of important discussion. There are several things, if you have more of in villages, are not as good as others. As an example, more brokerage firms for realtors may be adverse to the quality of care in a village, a municipal village like ours. So I am just interested in the fact that we appear to be getting banks, more banks. I'm advised that one of our longest-standing banks, of maybe the top 2 or 3, is going to withdraw from the village. I'm also informed by an awful lot of people, unrelated to the village, that the banking community, with respect to retail banking and the paying of overhead and all that sort of stuff, is in fact external to us, unrelated to all the residents of the village, summer residents included, an item that's under a great deal of change right now compared to the past. So I'd just like to add that to the record. We get these kind of inputs in making what we hope is a balanced decision as to whether this is a good idea on balance to approve, because it's a business. That's my introduction. Council, excuse me for such a long introduction, but I get an awful lot of information that comes to us by a lot of routes, both formal and informal. Thank you. Would you like to proceed?
I didn't know if Kathy Eisman wanted to open, or...
Would you like to?
I would just make a recommendation that the board open the public hearing at this point.
I thought we hadn't already opened it last time?
Actually vote on opening the public hearing.
Okay. I thought we opened it the last
For
meeting.
this
Oh,
is...
for this meeting?
For
Okay.
this.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to open the public hearing for Hampton's HDA LLC at 116 North Sea Road.
Okay.
You have anything to say?
I'll second that.
Aye.
In favor?
Aye.
I have submitted the affidavit of both the posting and the mailing.
Thank you. I saw the sign. Quite visible.
Why don't you make a bit of a presentation?
All right. The application before you is for site plan review for a bank, unspecified facility with drive-up window. It's approximately 3,600 square feet. It's using the existing two-family, two-story dwelling to be relocated and expanded and renovated. If you have specific questions with reference to the building design, the entire team is here. John Rose is the architect. He was actually before the ARB on a preliminary in September of 2017. Shortly thereafter, when we got the positive feedback, we had the informal Gil was before you in October.
Yes, we
In
did.
January, I was here for, myself, because Gil was away, on the pre-submission conference.
Right.
And since then, there's been multiple dialogue, both with you, as well as all of your consultants regarding this building. It's been revised and tweaked. The banking is a permitted use in the office district. Therefore, and what we're proposing here is actually in compliance with all of your zoning regulations. This is not a special exception use. No variances are required. Basically, what we have here in the current site plan before you. I believe that we have addressed, that is, the professionals have addressed your concerns regarding noting the off-street parking, the 3 additional parking spaces, one of the comments that Ms. Eisman had. We've also provided for a long triangular strip along the, I believe, which side is that? On the east side of North Sea Road, because you were concerned that in the future, in the event that the turning lane was required, that you wanted to have adequate space. I know originally a 10-foot strip was discussed, but that was not feasible, and I believe that this accomplishes that the variable long thin triangle accomplishes that. It is a type 2 action, SECRA, because it's under 4,000 square feet, and I believe that your planning consultants are in agreement with that. We all have Joe Lombardi here, if you want to address any of the siting conditions. One of the things was about all the drainage structures. They are all noted there on the plan now that you currently have before you. All of your comments that were made by both Kathy as well as the various board members during the course of this developing this plan have been incorporated. So what you have there basically is what we're proposing as the final review. Obviously, we know this is the first time that we've had a public hearing, so it will be subject to your further comments as well as comments of the public. I know that up to this point there was some discussion as to whether Bowdoin Square, whether access was permitted onto Bowdoin Square, and we've had our counsel, research counsel, in fact, Mr. McGowan is here if you want further questions, saying, and I believe that your counsel is in agreement, that that all of, there's no park area described. It is a right-of-way, and that we do have the right to access Bowdoin Square and put our ingress and egress on that onto Bowdoin Square. That it is all sort of right. It's all of a road, in other words. So rather than belabor this, I would really like, unless you have specific questions for our team members, as well as open it up to the public. Since you've had this before you for many times, that's where I would like to leave it.
Well, thank you very much, Mary Jane. We, for the history, I recollect, I think the rest of us do recollect that, Kathy, you were dealing, refresh our recollection for a minute, I believe you were dealing with drainage issues finally on the road that goes south toward the square. It had a question to do with, would it have adequate drainage and trees for the future, because trees don't live forever. I think that was the last little detail that wasn't before us and discussed in satisfaction. And Mr. Rose's work, we've had it for a long time. I understand he's revised it several times.
I'll just add, the drainage field that you see on this plan is within the Bowdoin Square right-of-way, as Mary Jane Asado had said, that the village wishes to possibly expand that drainage area. That's related to the Lake Agawam watershed area. Mm-hmm. And so there was concern that the driveway would inhibit the additional drainage structures to the east of that. Yep. If there was a driveway put in.
Thank you.
The applicant and the engineers have designed it in such a way that the drainage can be extended underneath the driveway. They are going to put piping through those drainage pools that can be connected to in the future. So that's part of the design that's proposed.
If you look at the site plan at the request, all of the drainage structures that were installed in the right-of-way have been noted. And they've been located, and there's a 5-foot concrete drainage channel that is also located, that is shown on the northerly side of Bowdoin Square. So all recently installed drainage facilities have traffic-bearing covers, is my understanding, as required, and they won't be affected by the construction of the proposed driveway. If you have further questions to that, I think that Joe Lombardi can answer that. And then the reinforced concrete apron that will incorporate the concrete drainage will be constructed at the intersection of the proposed driveway and Bowdoin Square. And if you'd like to come up and speak further to that, I mean, I'm certainly Mr. Lombardi can answer those questions.
If Kathy says it's been addressed, we just had it because of this larger issue. It was brought before us that it's something that needed to be considered in the plans. Right. And it's your opinion that it has been. We just needed to check that.
And the village engineer has looked at this. He has confirmed that they've done everything they need to do as far as vehicle support for the drainage pools that are going to be in the driveway. We would also have a condition that a village engineer would be out in the field as things are investigated, as they are doing the construction.
Okay.
So.
Any member of the public like to speak on this matter? Please come forward. And for the sake of everything that we're doing, identify yourself, please.
I will.
For the record. Charlie needs to get it just right.
My name is Sally Van Allen, and I reside at 49 North Main Street, which is on the corner of Bowdoin Square and North Main Street. And I'm very, very concerned about having a drive-in bank basically across the street and just down away. If you've ever walked Bowdoin Square, it's already rather treacherous with the traffic conditions, people coming in different directions, and to add an egress to a bank seems very peculiar to me, to add it to the already sort of dangerous conditions for a pedestrian. And though I'd like to think that we're a walkable town, it's becoming less walkable. The I have here to pass out is actually a copy of Pelletro's map showing that George Bowdoin, when he owned the house, he bought it in 1822. He was someone that landed on a boat from Montauk, made his way to Southampton, became an important citizen. So I'm also concerned about the historic value of the home, that it is, the village seems to be allowing more and more businesses to creep into the historic district. My house on the other side of the square is part of the historic district, and I think that this house, even though it is zoned, currently zoned for a bank, needs to be considered that it is a historic home, and a valuable old citizen for whom the square is named lived there. I can't speak to the issues of another bank in town, but I am one of those people that am flabbergasted that a bank that won't even name who they are wants to come in to the village. There are lots of other properties. What about the old post office? There's already a drive-in. There are other options to not encroach on the historic district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have a comment?
If I may.
Yes, sir.
The neighbor brings up a good point. John Rose, architect,
Yes, excuse me, John. Yeah.
brings up a good point about the historic value of the building. As you know, we went in front of the Architecture Review Board, and they brought those questions up. It is in the historic district, but it is not a contributing building. Built somewhere around 1858. But one of the things we did when we met with the ARB is we said, you know, although it's not a contributing building, I believe it's really important, and I agree with you. And one of the things that we've gone out of our way to do is preserve the entire building. Not just save it and bury it. We're going to pick it up, as you may recall. Mm-hmm. We're going to rebuild it because the ceiling height is about 7'2", so it's a little low on the first floor. And we're going to really go out of our way to preserve the old building. It is a great building, and it's right at the entrance to the village, but it's not a contributing structure. So technically one could remove it, but we'd never do that because it's a really good building. And the plans that were submitted in front of the ARB were reviewed by all. We made several changes. Their historical consultant went through it. Zach did a great job, very thorough. And I think that if you take a look at it from a historical standpoint, I think we've done a decent job of preserving it and really not increasing it that much. It's not like we're doubling the size of it. We're adding a small amount to it.
I don't have the drawing. I can see, it seems to me it was mostly to put in the facilities for drive-through banking to the rear.
Yeah.
To the north.
Whenever you preserve historic structures, once again, it's not one, but it should be, the goal is to add to the back of it. You know,
away from the square. It was going to go
as
north,
much as
as I
you can.
remembered, essentially, and
yeah.
maybe it was a little bit east.
And the guidelines
for
state.
the cars to drive through,
Correct.
use the cash
Correct.
machines.
Yep. And we've made sure that the sight lines and the headlights and all that aren't interfering with the neighbors. We spend a good deal of time siting this building.
Thank you. Any questions? Any more people who wish to speak from the public? Yes, sir.
Hello, Robert Lohman, 28 Bowdoin Square. In 1999, I purchased my little house mid-block, sort of a catty corner across from the bank location. At the time when I went to renovate my house, which was quite a mess inside, I was told that I could do what I wanted to as long as it didn't change how the house looked from the street. And with 7-foot 3-inch ceilings on the first floor and 6-foot 6-inch ceilings on the second floor, that's including up into the peak of the roof, it was quite a trek to tuck everything in behind there. But I managed to, and I've had a house that I've enjoyed living in for the last almost 20 years. My house appears on the surveys somewhere around 1912. And because I was in the historic district, no one made any suggestion to me that I had any other option than to preserve the appearance of the house. And I think that Bowden Square is kind of special in that the homes within the block have a very consistent look and all have are of a similar feel and era. And I think it'd be a shame if we messed with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other attendees wish to speak? Right, anyone on the board have any questions?
I have a few questions. So how many parking spots are they going to lose in Bowden Square total with the entrance there?
Hi, Joe Lombardi from the Rayner Group. In order to provide adequate site distance, 7 spaces will be.
Okay, and you guys mentioned there's 3 that were going to be added?
The village already added them on the north side, the south side of
So it's a loss of spots, and a loss of 4 spots?
Altogether, yeah, net loss.
All right, and also, okay, so loss of 4 spots there. How am I going with this? Okay.
Anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I have opinions, but I don't have questions.
I had a couple of questions. Kathy, if you could just educate me a little bit. The applicant made reference to the fact that this being under 4,000 square foot, it's a type 2 action. What are the consequences for the board of that fact?
It just means that you don't have to do an environmental assessment form and identify whether there's a potential for significant adverse impacts. It falls within the threshold that the state, the DEC, had determined would not cause an impact to the extent that you would need to do an environmental impact statement. This applicant, however, did the biggest issue I would think to look at if it did go to that stage would have been a traffic study. And this applicant actually did a traffic impact study to identify, how this bank would affect the traffic in the area and the flow of traffic. And so that was, to the board's benefit to be able to review that.
If you'll note in your record that we voluntarily had done engineering, do a comprehensive study, and that's how some of the left turn and those issues came up, even though it didn't rise to the level of significance in the sense of it's a type 2 action. We felt that in the applicant, the owner of the property, really wanted a comprehensive review and wants to offer up all the information that you need to make this decision.
I'm sure you heard one of the comments being concerned about the pedestrian safety in the square with the additional egress coming from the bank onto Bowden Square. Did the traffic study address that issue?
No, we didn't look at that specifically. There's no sidewalks on the north side of Bowden Square or on the south side. It's not pedestrian friendly because there's no sidewalks provided. I would say the biggest issue with pedestrians is probably people who walk across the street from the restaurant to cars that are parked on the north side or to the lot down the way. Particularly at night, when there's not adequate light.
So Kathy, during the discussion of this application previous, Mr. Flanagan made the point, and I believe it was supported, that because this is a corner lot, and that is a right-of-way, it's not a park, that the owner of this lot, the applicant, has a right to put a driveway onto Bowden Square. Are there any instances, for instance, pedestrian safety or whatever, that would preclude that right?
I believe it would be a tough thing to demonstrate on the village's part, especially because there are no sidewalks here. The fact that they are actually removing parking spaces actually would increase the visibility for pedestrians walking along Bowden Square. So.
Can I jump on the back? Do they, I know they have the right, this corner lot, to have the access. Do they have the, to take the spots away if the spots are blocking that access?
It does have to go through the village trustees.
Okay.
So that ultimately will have to go to the trustees.
Yeah, because I look at other examples in the village of Bank 150 Hampton Road, which is the Bridgehampton National Bank on Hampton Road, and they only have the one access off of Little Plains because there's spots already on Hampton Road in front of that bank, so they didn't put a second access off of Hampton Road. So I know that that was one of the things that was raised by them legally, was that there was two, they have the right of way, but there's another example of another bank in the village that has that didn't take the right of way because they had the spots. So I don't know if that was something that was addressed or looked at.
So you're saying that they didn't have to, they didn't take it, they didn't reduce the on-street parking?
Yeah, if you look at the Bridgehampton National Bank on Hampton Road, there's spots, parallel parking spots right in front of them. They only did one access point, and that was off of Little Plains.
There's no access on?
No, there's no on Hampton Road because they didn't want to take away those spots.
Gotcha.
That service for
No,
town
in
hall.
fact, we didn't have an access on Hampton Road because it was too trafficked.
Okay.
That's right.
I wasn't, that's what I was
Yeah, I know.
going to.
It didn't have anything to do with the ingress and egress to a second access. It was decided that that was not a favorable place to put either.
Okay.
Which is exactly why we're proposing the access to Bowden Square.
Okay.
It's not, we wouldn't want our traffic to come out and try and make a left turn out of the bank on the North Sea Road. That, we think that would be hazardous. Now they can come out, they go into Bowden Square, they then go down to the signal, and they have this traffic signal help. Another thing that you clarify with the number of parking spaces. According to law, you have to stay away from the access. How close you restrict parking to the access is up to the trustees. There are lots of roads, Nugent Square, CVS, for instance, where the parking is allowed closer. It was a recommendation of the village's engineer that we take as much as we did.
Okay. And was there a reason why, going back to the North Sea Road, that you guys did it? It's not an exit only, entrance only, because Fowler's down the road only has I guess it's only an entrance, and then the bank across the street, which is another Bridgehampton, only has an entrance and doesn't have an exit. But you guys on the application have an entrance and an exit in that same spot?
We have a right turn in, right turn out, and
was that
a left turn in, because we have a left turn in.
But out to the west, there's no left turn.
Oh, no. We don't think that could be accommodated safely.
Well, you know, in terms of traffic, we've got what will now be a 3-bank intersection, plus the post office and a frequently trafficked market. So it's not a trivial spot in the village, and it's people coming and going. And you came and testified that that intersection would also be easily handleable if we were to move the ambulance department. I mean, there are a number of intrusions into that intersection which are material now. If the ambulance department was moving, and I believe you testified in front of us, just as we did our favor to the mayor to say, look at environmental issues and the traffic from moving the ambulance from
the ambulance
over there, that intersection wouldn't be a problem. It could be handled to escape. But you know,
the ambulance
often in this intersection.
The ambulance moving is not a capacity issue at all. But it is somewhat of a safety. That's why we recommended that we put preemption in.
I remember all that. My point was not the solution to what was proposed and what the village trustees thought they wanted to do. It's that this intersection is, for the population of the village and the people using it all the time, a relatively high impact intersection. It really, Nothing passive about it.
And we're contributing some land to help make it better.
Well, now, you may, that's a separate topic.
So you guys felt like you could make that the right, you can come and go from that exit comfortably with the other businesses only having entrances there. That's
The biggest problem with an unsignalized intersection and driveway is always the left turn out.
Yeah, I mean, I drive that road every day. I see it. And then the last question I had was just lighting coming off Bowden Square up the driveway, because you're taking away 7 spots, which is going to be 4 spots. So you have all that parallel parking that people park in. They go into Union Canteen and other places. So those cars are going to spill over into this lot, regardless of what you look at it. Is there lighting coming off of Bowden Square for people that are going to be walking from your lot to Bowden Square at night? Now that those spots have been taken down, or a pathway? Because I see the entrance on here where you're going, but there's no sidewalk. There's nothing for people from your lot to Bowden Square.
Yeah, there's a sidewalk along North Sea Road, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
But people are going to, they're going to...
Why don't we consider a sidewalk for both sides of that intersection there? I see little children at Union Cantina playing in the yard because they do outdoor service, and it does look very dangerous to me.
Well, there's no sidewalk. You'd have, in order to put sidewalk along the Union Cafe side, you'd have to pull back that parallel parking that they have. The other side of the street, yeah, there's room, certainly room to put it in.
What about a sidewalk just down your driveway off of your lot to the road?
I don't know if
for people that are going to be parking in the lot and then probably service. I think
it's just as easy for them to use North Sea Road, the sidewalk there, and probably because of grades, probably better, because we have that downgrade, and I don't think with what's going on at the bank that would be a good idea.
Hi, my name is Stephen Rhoda with Aris Design. We prepared the lighting plan.
You're with
Aris Design.
You're trees and bushes.
Trees and bushes, but lighting plan as well. We did not propose lighting within the right-of-way, so there's lighting as you get onto the property.
Okay.
So that's a good point. So.
Yeah, because, like they're going to park and they're going to spill over, and what happens when someone's walking there at night? Because those spots are now gone.
We can't propose lighting outside of our property. So.
Joe Lombardi from the Rayner Group again. With respect to sidewalk, we do provide a walkway that goes from the bank down to North Sea Road, closer to the intersection of Bowden Square and North Sea Road. So it would be possible for people to use the parking lot and go down that walkway.
Can you show us on the map where that is?
The walkway is on the west side of the building, and it goes from the parking lot down to the sidewalk that's along North Sea Road.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional
If I could just
questions
add
at this point? Yes, sir.
Sidewalk is also handicap accessible. So right here, there is the sidewalk, and one can come up here and get you to this property, because there is an elevation change, so that was important that it's very accessible.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot, Sally Van Allen again. However, they're using that sidewalk to get to the Union Cantina. There's no pedestrian crosswalk at that intersection. I mean, it's not making it safer.
I think that should be brought up. There is not.
Trustees,
Yeah.
It's a big trustee issue. We meet, I think, on a lot of Thursdays. What is a nearby neighbor, make them aware of issues in the neighborhood, please, with this change.
I appreciate the guidance.
All right, any other comments from here? I think we should entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I do want to ask Kathy one other question. Earlier in the discussion, there was quite a bit of opposition from Gary Gillespie towards what he viewed as his green space.
Yes, yes.
Am I to think now that he's agreed that the drainage is now being considered in the plan to go under the road, that he's become more amenable to the idea?
I would say that he would prefer that it doesn't have access, but that was his biggest issue, was that the drainage we had to be able to expand the drainage. And he liked the idea of keeping it very park-like setting. That having been said, this is a one-lane driveway, and the applicant had brought this up in the past, is that as it is now, the applicant could have come in and put a driveway into Bowden Square without coming to the planning board, because he has a right to have access. So a driveway, as the other owners along Bowden Square have, an access across the right-of-way could have been done. So, I know he would rather not see it, but I think that mitigation and having the connection for future expansion of the drainage pools helps a lot.
Okay, then, well, it seems to me we have a motion that the public hearing be closed.
It's in order.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing as there are no further comments from the public this evening.
Second.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Happy New Year.
We will be in touch with the village trustees. As this lady said, there are just sort of residual issues we ought to, before we complete it, we'd like to get those issues addressed by the trustees. The parking has to be done.
The parking issue.
Yeah, we got the parking and this crosswalk issue.
Okay.
And everything. And would you tell your client it might be awfully nice, private property is none of our business, awfully nice to know who they're going to have in which bank.
I will relay
It's
that.
motion.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you. Kathy, the next item is one we've been working on, which is adjournment.
An adjournment, they've requested an adjournment, I guess. I haven't seen the adjournment request for the 500 Captain's Neck Lane.
I don't see
Oh, it
that.
had done. We did it already. Okay, so that's approved. So I'm going to step down right now because Pat Cleary is the consultant for this next item.
The next item is Beechwood Ledge, and you know the smoke in the engine or something. Yeah. Okay. Two recusals. You go out and sit with John and listen, I guess, but you're not participating.
Jackie, you clear what's happening? Mr. Eppley's recusing himself of this application.
Patrick, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Even for the public record, I would like to report, and it's nice, I haven't seen you in several weeks and months.
Several months, yeah.
Bit of a squint. I'm glad you're on the case.
Thank you.
Seems to me, I will observe that we did get your memorandum late on Friday, and with all offense to those interested in, I guess, college football tonight and professional football and things going on, there's a distraction at this time of year. It seems to me we have not had a full chance to go through it. So if we can have maybe a discussion at this point with you of a few items.
Sure.
And any other matters that ought to come before our consideration. This is a real event for the village.
Absolutely,
Everybody
Mr. Chairman.
recognizes.
So I can give you a little précis of where we are.
Would you bring us up to date?
Surely.
Because you've been working on, I won't say in the dark, just because we haven't seen you, but would you bring us up to date, please, as fully as you can this evening?
So this application came before you in 2016, I think it began.
Yep.
It involves a fairly significant renovation of the Village Latch site. Because of the potential significance of that development, you adopted a positive declaration, requiring the applicant to prepare a full environmental impact statement for the project. You went through the environmental impact statement review in significant detail throughout 2016 and 2017, and in September of 2017, you adopted environmental findings, indicating that the project, with the mitigation measures that were provided by the applicant, would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. The project, as proposed, required a number of variances. The applicant made their way to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and as a result of the ZBA's review of the project changed. So the project originally involved 24 dwelling units. It had been reduced in scope as a result of the ZBA's review. So the project now involves 19 units. The Terry Cottage, which was proposed to be an integral part of the project, has been eliminated. It sits on a separate lot. So that has been eliminated from the project in the context of its ownership. The several elements of the plan, which the applicant can describe to you in detail this evening, have been modified, but in every instance, the impacts have been reduced. The scale or scope of the variances that are required have been mitigated. The project has been moved away from encroachments. The Village Latch building, which was to be picked up and moved toward the front of the site to be in line with the Terry Cottage, is no longer proposed, so it will remain in place. There was a central motor court and garages that were proposed. That's been eliminated. The clubhouse has been relocated to a different location on the property. So fairly significant changes to the plan, all of which made the plan smaller and less impactful from the plan you reviewed in 2017. One element of the plan that has changed that you have not seen is the driveway location has shifted from the east end of the site to the center of the property. That's a change that you have not seen. So where you are in the process is you have to make a determination as to whether or not the changes are in fact consistent with your findings from 2017. And if you can render that decision, then you can move toward undertaking the detailed review of the site plan application as it's been amended before you. So that's sort of where we are today, and I think the applicant's prepared to give you a presentation this evening.
Okay, why don't we get that before we get into some questions? Council, you
for the applicant,
please.
Nice
to see you again.
Good to see you. Happy New Year. For the applicant, David Gilmartin Jr., Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, New York. We were last before you on September 5th of 2017, where you adopted a negative declaration. That negative declaration, I think in most part, was due to the environmental benefits that this project would result in the betterment of the infrastructure within the property. We went through...
David, just to interrupt, so you actually didn't adopt negative you adopted findings.
Yeah.
So semantic difference, just for the record.
Thank you. You can keep this on. I'd love to hear your pitch. I've heard you talk about it, what you thought we did or reported that we did.
Well, your
finding Board of Appeals.
Your finding statement's overwhelming.
I've listened to some of it, so I'll listen carefully again, so keep going.
Your finding statement overwhelmingly supported the project. We then went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, where we had some significant back and forthing both with the board and with Whitefield and the Southampton Association. And through that process, we came to an agreement on what the project should be. And I have Kevin Walsh is here tonight, and he'll go through the details of the changes that we made to accommodate some of the concerns of the neighbors that we were interested in. And ultimately tonight, I think Mr. Cleary will agree that we have submitted to you a complete package for site plan review. So we would like you to schedule it for a public hearing at your next hearing, which I believe is February 4th. And we'd also like you to make any of the referrals. I think the ARB is the only referral, but I'll stand corrected if that's not true. But we'd like you to take those actions tonight so we can get the project moving. I'll ask Mr. Walsh to come up, and he'll go through in detail the changes that we made during the ZBA process. But again, I think as you look at it with SECRA in mind, all of the changes that we made resulted in a less impactful project. So I think the secret findings that you have can remain intact, and we can move forward with dealing with the site plan issues. So I'll ask Kevin to come forward now.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening,
Kevin,
members of the
stand
board.
here.
How are you?
So what can you tell us?
Well, you've got the two plans in front of you. I think the pictures probably speak 1,000 words here. On your left, we
You gave
have...
us a large drawing that I had ready to come tonight.
Yes.
With an interruption. I've actually read it as carefully as my skills allow, so I've seen an awful lot of and layers with the drainage, the water and all that, and I've seen a lot of that, so thank you. However that appeared, we did it, it's immense.
Yeah.
It's the largest drawing I've seen.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep it simple here because I think I can illustrate to you what we're talking about with simply the two site plans. On your left, the original site plan that shows the motor court and the 24 units and the shifting of the village latch building and the two entrances and so on. The one on the right, obviously, being the current site plan. That's part of that package that you received. Mr. Cleary's memo goes into a lot of detail that I don't know that it's necessary for me to cover right now. What I'm going to do is borrow from his summary and walk you through the major changes and speak to the issue of the entrance as well. So, as mentioned, the overall number of units has been reduced from 24 to 19. We no longer have multiple units in the Terry Cottage building. That's a single unit, which I'll talk about in a second. We're down to 2 units in the Village Latch building, and then the number of buildings throughout the site has been reduced accordingly. As I mentioned, the Terry Cottage is going to remain now as a single-family home. It will remain on a separate tax lot. It will, however, have access from the proposed driveway that services the entire multifamily.
You come in and go west to use for vehicles, come in and go west off the driveway to get to that house.
Yes, that's correct. That's
There won't be a
correct.
driveway off of Hill Street.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So that single dwelling will have rights over that roadway for access and utilities and so on and so forth. It may ultimately be part of the HOA. That's going to be up to the owners to determine. The plan was also amended with respect to the size and the depth of the buildings, of the units, and what that enabled us to do is meet the 35-foot side yard requirements throughout the site, so we no longer need relief from the 35 feet. The Village Latch building, as I mentioned, was originally to be shifted to the south to align with the Terry Cottage building. It's going to remain where it is, and this all comes into play when we discuss the driveway access, which I will in a second. The motor court and the freestanding garages have been eliminated. The units all have their own garages at this point. And the pool and clubhouse has been relocated from essentially the front and middle of the site to what would be the northeast corner opposite the vacant village land. Okay. Just to touch on the driveway issue for a second, because I know it was mentioned that that's something you may not have been familiar with off the bat. There's a few things that does for us, or that drove that decision, and one is it allows us to combine all of the access for the site into one driveway. Best to have fewer rather than more. Before we had obviously 2 separate entrances, one to the extreme east end of the property and the other was the remaining driveway for the Terry Cottage building. In locating it in the middle of the site, it's further away from both the Whitefield entrance and and Windmill Lane, or actually the entrance to the Southampton Inn, which again, puts it almost equidistant between the two and separates that traffic maneuver. There's obviously less volume on the road now, as we only have 19 multifamily units compared to what we had before. And the alignment of the road, and this goes to the idea, this is tied in with the idea of not moving the latch building. Moving the latch building had us coming in around behind the latch as it was relocated. It meant a number of trees here would have to be removed, and a lot of the existing vegetation along the perimeter. This allows us to keep the vegetation It kind of suggests then that the entrance should be through the middle and between the two buildings. However, we've realigned that road or aligned that road in such a way and added landscaping, which you would have seen on the landscape plans that were part of that package, landscaped in such a way that it retains the character of the streetscape along Hill Street. You'll still have the hedges, you'll still have the vegetation front and side, and you won't be able to see directly down the road and see the multifamily development. Okay. I think that's the gist of it. Are there any questions I can answer?
Yeah. By reducing the number of dwellings, have you increased the size of them, or they appear to be sort of just rotated, but they don't appear to be considerably bigger?
I'm sorry, they do or they don't?
They don't.
No, I don't believe they are. Steve and Doug can speak to the actual specifics of the architecture. I don't know that we got far enough in this version to put actual square footages on them, but you can see that they're more shallow,
right,
and that's what allowed us to maintain those side yard setbacks.
And where are the garage structures?
The garages are in the middle of these unit types, toward the inside of these two unit types. Toward the inside here. You can see it on the shaded area.
Those are three separate units in the back?
These are three separate units, that's correct.
They look pretty tight.
Well, it was 4 before. So it's, I think we're maintaining a good size unit.
Where do people who come to visit the people living here park on the street?
There is additional visitor parking shown throughout the site. The exact number is upside down, so, well, 66 is the total, but
68 or maybe 63.
Right, but there are about, if I'm reading this right, upside down, it's, I think, 29 spaces that are along the roadway for, presumably for visitors. I think right now we have about 3.5 total per unit.
With the old one, I remember thinking we were concerned from an aggregate point of view about something like making our judgment that things like this were likely to happen or else we'd get back to it. I think we're 92 spots versus the 68, to 63 to 68.
There were 74 spots before, and that's about 3 per unit. We have about 3.5 per unit now.
But there's a per unit, there's garage parking.
Sure.
Of one per unit?
Yeah, there's a single garage for each of the units, there's a driveway for each of the units, then there's additional on-street parking on top of that.
Do the units in the back each have their own driveway?
They do. They do.
Like going...
right here. This is the one, this is the one unit, I guess, that has these are the 2 units that have double garages, but each of these units have their own garage and driveway.
So the garages would be facing east then?
The garages of these units?
Well, no, I think the facade of those is what I meant to say, of those would be facing...
They're facing south.
They face south. They're going
okay,
facing south.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going down toward the beach.
The total that we're providing is 66. We're required to provide 38.
38, that's right.
We have some experience with people coming to a site, and we think that is sufficient. The other question that Member Stevenson had, total floor area of the project was reduced from 101,634 square feet to 65,586. So the units have been reduced in size significantly also.
Just rule of thumb, these are 3-bedroom townhouses,
yes,
roughly. We were trying to judge before from more representatives. So these are 3-bedroom townhouses, right?
Right.
Okay.
Have you downsized the sewage treatment plant or keeping that?
They're individual, the innovative alternative systems for each individual unit, and they'll obviously meet the health department.
Was that, Patrick, similar to what we talked about?
It's exactly what we talked about, and if you remember, we spent an awful lot of time dealing with that.
It's not an aggregate, it's individual. What we remember were individual efforts, not a...
Yeah, they are, the health department allows them to be grouped, depending on the flow, but they are, for all intents and purposes, individual systems.
Okay. Not that it's critical, because it's none of our business what people do by contract. This is likely to be 21 units, depending on, quote, the private house, but it depends on what they decide afterward, I assume. My personal assumption would be this is a 21-spot joint, not 19, because the other house will probably end up being 2, according to the memo.
No, the Terry Cottage will be a single-family dwelling. That's all it's entitled to be, and that came out during the zoning board process. That's why it was withdrawn basically from the application requesting relief. So it will be a single-family dwelling.
Dave, if you move there, okay, and you're the future owner, and you've been to a funeral or something like that, you decide you want to join the POA because you've got a child who's going to, or somebody's going to be there. I mean, it seems to me that's just, it's a possible addition, which is very nice because we keep the cottage, which everybody likes, and it fits next to Whitefield. There's a lot of pluses. I want to make sure we get a feel for what's likely.
I'm telling you today, that will be a single-family dwelling, and it can only be a single-family dwelling.
Okay, because we had a caveat that it's, might go to the POA generally.
So no. The caveat that why it's included in all the statistics is that it may be part of the homeowners association. That decision hasn't been made yet.
Okay.
So within the zoning board application, we analyzed it both ways. So they would have all of the information that was required. The final decision on whether it's in the HOA or not, hasn't been decided, but it can only be a single-family dwelling.
Thank you.
It's very likely, Mr. Chairman, they're sharing the driveway, so...
Oh, no, I understand. I'm on one of those.
They'll have a relationship, however that's defined is to be determined, I think.
And those agreements are a pain in the neck. I'm on one. I know all about it.
Well, fortunately, there's one owner today to make that agreement, so there won't be any negotiation.
But once people go in and out, the discussions are complex, I've learned, in the village. Okay. There have been some questions about extent to the back, to go by the residences and so forth. It's now back pretty far in terms of what would, if it was not probably a continuation, this is really a continuation of a major disconforming or whatever you call use. I mean, we're taking one bad use and making it into a new bad use, but it's better bad use.
To change from one non-conforming use to another, that's a benefit to the neighbor.
From the village's point of view, it is a change of a non-conforming use that has been somewhere between ignored and done its own thing for several generations to a new non-conforming use. So part of it is to have it in that mosaic when we look at the community, which are additional features if we were doing some of the, I'll call them, social issues of a secret, which is more environmental. We were dealing with the environmental issues primarily of continuing it. What's the flood? What about Lake Agawam? It's in a tough spot. I understand that, but so this is, it's pretty far back against the property owners in the rear. So this is an issue that we have to. It's a nice neighborhood back here.
Yeah,
very carefully.
No further than the original proposal, and actually there are fewer units facing the neighbor to the north.
Ward 3, about the same, look at my things, it was about the same distance, plus or
The
minus.
same distance as it was last time?
Yeah, the old plan, it went back about 25 feet.
And now it's 35?
No, it was always 35 in the rear,
Okay.
but there were 4 units in the rear before where there are 3
And do
units.
those houses or townhouses, if you want them, do they have backyards?
They have patios. And where the patios, where we have room to fit the patios beyond that 35-foot setback, we have them. Where we don't, in the rear, because the rear was, as you said, especially sensitive, the patio's been moved around
Yeah,
to the side.
that part makes me very nervous. That seems so close to the adjacent property.
I mean, that was the agreement with the owner of the property to the back, and that's what the zoning board approved. And they also...
Agreement's been made relative to that, has it?
There was an agreement with the prior owner of the latch who owned the property to the rear that was at, I believe, 30 or 35 feet. It was also, I mean, and that's a private agreement, so you're not bound by that. But the zoning board approved this. This is the
The zoning board, they're stuck with their own, we have to look at all the stuff.
It just seems like that back is a playground,
If there's an
unless they're
agreement.
just retired people.
All right, we're just trying to get the facts. If there's an agreement that's been done by the property owner with them, that's important to know.
to the rear. We'll provide that.
Okay, that would be good to. I have one other question. These MF agreements in the village, which I even have a map, but I don't know all the names. There are 3 other MF agreements along Hampton Road when you go east that are not on the list of either the ZBA's thing or ours. Fine. What fascinates me personally is I read the traffic study very carefully when we went through this before. And since, as a guy who drives too much around here, I've never seen a satisfactory traffic study. And my background is I bought them. I've used them. Same guys, done engineering. I've used them down at the beach, all sorts of stuff. The traffic study basically said there'd be no change in traffic at the intersection of Hill Street and Moses Lane, if you read it all. Moses Lane is several streets to the west. Breeze and Halsey are used constantly for people to cut that way, to get to the post office, to go around that way. If we get around to doing the new park in the back of Moses Lane, it's another issue. I'd like, if it can be done, I don't want to impose a burden that's unfair, but I'd like to get some idea of what's likely to be a highly seasonal occupancy series of 20 spots. So what really is the likely traffic impact on Hill Street, which is now officially a disaster for moving? People there, they're not far away. They're near the village. Hopefully they'll use restaurants. They'll do all sorts of things that we find quite agreeable and so forth. There was talk to us, there's not going to be a lot of kids having to get from there to school and school buses and all those things get dismissed and done in the thing. Could we get some idea of possibly what's the traffic in those other ones, density, some units per acre, whatever the deal is, units per driveway, just some data to support that this is as reasonable as it's likely to be.
The Hampton Road.
There are 3 of them over there. I forget the names of them. There are 3 MF districts over there, separate ones.
I believe we had that information, and the zoning board wanted it more localized to this.
That's one of the few things we do are multifamily. We only do 5 things. One of them is multifamily. That's one of the reasons we're hearing this.
And what you're looking for is the trip generation from those other projects?
Yeah, just some idea, what are the trips? I mean, obviously, in January, you and I know it's quite different than July and August. So and with the parking spots. You know, somebody said to me, hey, it'll be great, but not a lot of people go and park at the Village Latch to, you know, even go to the parade, the 4th of July parade. You know, it just gets some feel, so we've responsibly viewed for the community. So it's an improvement to what has some other bad features to it. So what's the word for the village? It's a hot spot.
I don't understand. You want us to get information on the Hampton Road?
Could Dunn do that? Yeah. Could those? What are the exits per unit in July and in the summer?
There are 2 relevant questions, which is what do those other projects generate, and is it comparable to what this would generate?
Exactly.
So you can look apples to apples.
I mean,
That's a fair question.
They would be projected the same way as this was projected in this traffic study for this project. So
when I looked at the traffic studies out here, tend to be annualized.
Well, no, we did counts. I mean, we based the impacts on actual summer counts, August counts.
And that would be refreshing to get, if you could help make us smarter.
Okay. It's not for those other projects,
I read the traffic
obviously,
study a couple of times, and where the data comes from, it's...
Okay.
Okay, so that might help us.
And I think, as I heard Mr.
The other
Chairman,
issue on the traffic study was the curb. When you come up there, Hill Street jogs in. I assume it's going to just stay the same, or will there be a curb?
But we're
we designed this wonderful new driveway.
Right, but well, we don't have the capacity to realign Hill Street, but we're moving the entrance further away from that jog in Hill Street.
No, I just right. Okay.
Right. Before it was right at that jog in Hill Street.
And that turn affects the Hill Street traffic going west that goes down First Neck Lane. That's because you have the traffic that comes out whenever they revise or re-revise, I guess it's Viridian Way, whatever the name of the road is that goes in that way, which used to go through when you come out at behind the movie theater. So that is also for the average driver in town topic. So we just need to be focused on. If you haven't changed Hill Street, that's fine.
Any better than what we're being asked to do as far as...
Are you asking us to get the trip generation from the multifamily developments on Hampton Road?
Yes, please.
Okay. I mean,
Okay. I would help me to make it, that we've had a rational judgment about the traffic.
The trip
change of
generation will be the same, it's just the number of units, and we'll provide that.
Yeah.
But that's existing condition, proposed condition, so I think that's a fair comparison. And I think the other thing I'm hearing from the chairman is the trip distribution that you have assigned to this.
Yeah.
If you can clarify that for them once again.
Okay, yeah, that's easy to do. It's in the report. In fact, it's in the update memo that you may or may not have, that the ZBA has, but you may have, I don't know.
Kevin, we're going to present that at the public hearing.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
We're going to make a full presentation.
Yeah, we can.
That's fine. You know, it's, you know, I have this curious view that says if, as long as we're stuck with this, the burden of proof doesn't apply with us. We're trying to get the ammunition so that whatever we do is sufficiently thorough or balanced or wise in terms of continuing 150 years of development of this village.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, my name is Richard Rosenberg. I am counsel with Beechwood, and I'm the guy that reviews that takes what Rooney gets approved, brings it to the Attorney General, and makes the rules and regulations. So I just want to very briefly just, from a legal basis, this is going to be a condominium townhouse development where when an owner buys the unit, they are going to be restricted in the exterior use. The exterior maintenance is done by the homeowners association.
Okay.
Everybody will have a little patio where they're restricted use. They can't go in and put a pool, a shed, a barbecue. That's why we have public areas. So it's going to be very much restricted. Okay. And at the public hearing, we will go in depth with that to you on that. And just very briefly, we did run traffic counts. If I'm understanding you correctly, and I presented with traffic engineers now for 30 years. And what you're looking for is using our best estimation, how many snowbirds, how many people are there.
You got it.
Based upon Bishop's Pond, we can easily provide that for you. Again, it's an educated guess, but we can fill that in with the information, and we'll be glad to present it to you. I understand what you're looking for.
And Bishop's Pond, some of them are in, and we're done. Bishop's Pond, which I know a little about for all these years, seems to me that is generically different than the ones that are on the Hampton Road.
Yes, it is.
It'd be nice to give us the full picture for the sake of the residents.
We'll do the best we can. A lot of that is basic on data, but we did collect chip generation reports, and there is the ITE and all the other, but I understand what you're saying. We're going to get it to you, and we'll present it we'll have the traffic engineer present it to you at the public hearing. Okay. That's okay.
One other, can I ask you a footnote question, which probably is not fair of the public, but if you're the expert that
not the expert, I do the best.
Deals with the AG and all that, people have come up to me to say, if of the 5 things that this so-called planning board does, you know, tennis courts, we got a list. One of them is multifamily stuff like this. Okay, see what this is what we're supposed to be good at. These things are taxed as a unit, sort of like it's a business. It's not, people don't have individual taxes to pay for the school.
In Suffolk County,
somebody said there are different rules.
Condominiums are taxed as if it's a rental. So therefore, the tax on an individual home, it would be approximately 25% less based upon the legislation in New York State.
Okay.
So in Suffolk County, each condominium, yes.
Okay.
So just as an example, Mr. Dubb, who's a developer of Beechwood, has a development Plainview that's a half a mile away from the Nassau County line. Had the development been in Suffolk, the taxes would have been about 25% less.
I get all this, when I say I get all this information, I get it from really knowledgeable sources that are dealing. Some of them come to me and say, if you guys do more multifamily stuff here, my taxes are going up down by the beach because I got to pay for everything. Say,
the one thing I can reply to that is the condominiums are also paying the village tax and the town tax for services that they are providing themselves, the roadways, the garbage pickup and things like that.
I understand. I've been in the middle of certiorari fights on businesses and clubs and things of all types in this village. So I'm familiar with that. I wanted to, if you're an expert, thank you. Thank you for the information. I wanted to get confirmation.
Mr. Dubb, both Michael Dubb, Stephen Dubb will speak at the hearing and answer any questions that the board has. We're an open book.
Okay.
Thank you.
But also remember the comparison of what was being paid by the latch, when it operated as the latch, and then as the number of units, which I think there's something in the DEIS which would be significantly higher.
It's a great topic. They're going to ask me how many people are moving in here won't pay any taxes at all in New York because they live in Florida. Come on, this is a complex topic. I don't pay taxes.
Property,
unless I have to.
property tax.
I don't pay any taxes. Okay, thank you. Any other questions yet at this point?
Not at this point.
Is it correct to say that the plan as written now meets all ZBA requirements? There are no additional variances required?
Yes. Yes.
Madam?
Anything? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, schedule a public hearing for the 4th?
Do we have a motion with our...
Make a motion to schedule a public hearing at the February meeting of the...
Just have one comment, just a matter of minor housekeeping. I think in Mr. Martin's letter of December 12th, at the end, he says the application is complete and we will appear at the January 7th meeting. I think what he might have meant to say is the applicant believes the application to be complete.
I said that with some discussion.
Thank you, counsel.
With your environmental consultant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was the basis of my
I understand.
assertion.
It's up for the board, though, to determine that, as you know.
Patrick's gone up. So we're going to take a motion that we schedule for February something. What's the date?
February
4th?
Yes, it's the word.
February 4th.
The question you raised, do we need to establish the amended site plan prior to the public hearing, or?
So this is the amended site plan that's been submitted. The issue that you need to come to terms with prior to that public hearing is whether or not the environmental determination that you made has been modified.
We don't need to do that before the public hearing.
No, you don't, but by the time you make a decision, you will have to do it. And we'll speak with Bo to determine if we'll adopt a new finding statement, if we'll affirm the old finding statement, the method by which you do that to be determined.
That seems to me is for the next hearing.
That's correct, but you have to come to terms with that issue.
Because given all of it, including the timing and everything else, and this is just newly amended, because if we just got your memo a few hours ago...
This is the first submission of, this is the first time you're seeing this plan.
Yeah, we're ready to catch up to speed.
I tried to get on the property today just because I wanted to see, and it's gated with some sort of lock now.
Well, just if you let us know, we'll get you access.
I will, yeah. I'm just
And I
letting
can
you know.
arrange that.
It's just interesting because it's never been locked before.
Well, it's locked while it's closed, and we had some issues over the summer with, before the summer with vagrancy, so we had to call the police and things like that, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But contact me.
Yes, I will, yeah.
Get access. And also, if you could make the referrals that are required, so we can get that process underway. Again, I only think it's the ARB, but...
I believe the only referral that's required is the ARB on this.
Well, I can do that. We got to get the other thing is that we don't do that. That's up to the applicant, isn't it?
Well, I think you can refer it to them, right? Or do we make a separate application?
So
We'll do that internally.
I think it's, the building, I think it's notified to them. But, Bo, it happens, I'm told
Internally
it happens internally in a system that is going to be reviewed for more visibility and constancy and effectiveness, but I think it's internal.
And Kathy just raised the point, so the original plan had 2 points of access, now there's a single one. We'll want the fire department's comment about whether that creates an access or public safety
All the
issue.
above. With fire and ARB, okay. Motion?
Make a motion to schedule this application for public hearing at the February 4th session of the planning board.
I second it.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
Nice to see you, sir.
Absolutely.
Who's going to have dinner?
Okay.
Should have brought back pizza.
All right, the next item is, again, Danielson that is still before the ZBA, right? So we're just being patient. Okay. McDonald's, again, same thing, Kathy, they're,
We haven't received anything new, right?
They're before zoning board.
Okay.
next,
It's good having you here, Jackie.
isn't it? Jackie, she knows exactly what's going on. This is fabulous. That's why I gave my speech. Okay, BRL, which I'm recusing myself from, so we don't have to, we're waiting for them to get going again, I think is the phrase.
I can stand in for you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant there's a letter in the file from the attorney for the applicant requesting an adjournment until the Feb. 4 meeting. So if I could have a motion from...
Adjournment as opposed to resubmitting. The agenda...
Adjourned.
Adjourned. Okay, because...
You're recusing yourself, Alan.
I just wanted to schedule. What's only, no, get it right, because you're here.
The letter was received late in the day.
Late in the day, thank you.
Thank you. So could I have a motion from, if anybody wants to with the request of the applicant to adjourn the application to the February 4th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to move to
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have to call the vote out.
Jane?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye. Call you back.
You've been impeached.
Bo's right, you gotta go through the ball still every once in a while, but what he does is do very well.
That's actually what I thought the MF district was after the recent comments about our president.
Okay.
Done.
All right.
We have minutes for November 5, November 26, and December 5, all of which, Kathy, I believe, as awkward as I am on this computer editing, I've gone through and sent to, in and out of Jackie to you, and I think...
Through internet, yeah.
Yeah, and so Antoinette, well, they go to Jackie for approval or filing eventually, but Antoinette's the pivot. I'll entertain anyone who was, I think everyone was here for those. Anyone away? I think, Pam, I think you were here.
I was here.
I think you got them all. Okay, then we can.
When was Zach's first board meeting?
Was I there for November?
Maybe 5 was before your.
Might have been. Was it right?
Oh, actually, I remember you down.
I think you were
So
here in October.
You were.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think it's November 3rd, though. Is that right?
Because I remember the first time I met you was...
Is the date wrong? I don't have my right calendar.
Jackie, do you
I was a
have a
little
calendar?
disoriented. Okay,
You
we're
can
all set
check. It might have been wrong on the agenda. It had December 3rd on the agenda, so I have a copy of the agenda.
It was the December 3rd meeting and a November 5th meeting.
Okay, so it was just wrong on this agenda for today. So you know, it was the December 3rd meeting. Everybody was here for that one. Everyone was here for November 5th.
December 3rd.
And Alan, were you here on the 26th of November?
Of November, as far as I know.
I haven't.
I think I was.
Have you been chairman lately? No. No? Well, then he was here.
No,
Okay.
I think I made all that. It was a problem that they fixed. So I think we can entertain a motion that the meeting of,
I make a motion to approve the minutes of November 5th, 2018, November 26th, 2018, and December 5th, 2018, as written and amended.
I'll second it. Okay,
I don't believe I've seen them.
never seen them? Okay, then we'll get them. All right.
All of them or any one of them?
Well, the issue, Bo, is...
Because it's going back and forth
Yeah.
between you
Yeah.
two, and I'm not getting
That never
minutes.
came around to you.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
You're
seeing-
really good on the internet. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
My motion.
And let me say that my concern, and Anthony, she's not here, and Kathy knows all about this, is that although Charlie does all this stuff on the video, and if you really want to deal with the stuff that happens on these boards in the village, everyone says, well, go to the video where you can get it and you write down everything else. But the minutes do go in the file, and people, particularly for old cases, they go in and look at them. And so for the minutes to be done well and accurately is important.
Especially if you're going to go through a whole couple hours of video to find what they were talking about, and you just want to find a certain case. So I think that they should be validated, yes.
Well, so I'm in favor of delaying this. I think we need to get a procedure. Jackie, if we can get a procedure so that we get, I hate to, kill more trees, but copies to everybody to read. So they say, hey, wait a minute, I really didn't say that, or no, that's not what the guy said. So we can get them in and get them right, because then the minutes will have more value. Because if you go upstairs and look at them, I go see Chris or somebody, he goes and finds them and he says, gee, these minutes, there's half a paragraph on it. Are you sure that was discussed? So I think it's a good thing to try to do.
Okay.
So let's delay it. We'll delay approval to the next, are we having a working meeting, it seems to me?
Yes.
Next, on the
January
28th.
Jackie, will you reach out to Antoinette and ask her to circulate the most recent, those minutes to everyone? So that way everybody can see them before the next meeting?
And then on the 28th, we'll get them all set and catch up with you on the files, okay? Because I know you're the keeper.
There were some minutes that were included in one of the last packages.
Yeah, and that one of those was ones that there was a question when she was here, and we also missed her for a meeting too, but one of them was where I said, no, I haven't even seen those yet, I need to edit them, just to do the role. I'm sort of editing more jointly with you and getting them out.
Right. So maybe there's a disconnect that they're not getting to everybody else.
Well, we've had a change of note takers almost every meeting. Okay, future meeting, next one is the end of this month. Work session. Yipe, that's a Monday. It is highly likely I am going to be forced to miss that one, which I learned this evening, before I came here. So will you get it approved? I'll approve the minutes beforehand.
I won't be here that Monday.
That Monday either?
Also will not be here that Monday.
Wait a minute, that's the 4th you're talking
No,
about?
no. January 28th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll be here for that.
Last Monday of this month.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, I'll be here for that, but I will not be here for the 4th.
Okay, so Jane, you in?
I actually,
If you can.
I'm going to certainly try, but I'm
I'm rooting for you.
going to be here the January 28th.
Okay, so you and Pam, we can get those up to speed.
I really miss having work session. Have we stopped the meeting yet?
We combined.
I know we did.
Still on the record.
Okay.
And then the next meeting after that is on Feb. 4. And I will be there if any, Pam, you're missing the 4th?
Right.
And so are you?
No, I'm just missing the 28th.
Just the 28th?
Okay.
Yeah,
It sounds like we'll have a quorum for the other meeting though, so.
yeah, for the 4th, we'll have
And for the 28th, so.
okay, and then we'll deal with the 25th when we face that with else. Okay, I'll entertain a motion with this combined.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second that?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Jackie, thank you for your patience and for coming tonight.